Welcome, yes, another episode of The Houses That Horror Built here on Horror Feed TV. You know what I'm going to do, and I'm going to keep bothering you until you do it. What is that exactly? Get the book.
Oh, man.
So continue supporting, get the book. If you have not gotten the book, please do. It is a good read, and they're short sentences. So it's not like you're going to sit there and, oh my God, there's a lot to read. It's a big novel. It is basically one word and a breakdown of, in horror style, something to do with that one word. So, Radar, you want to describe it a little bit more? That way, in case you haven't got it yet.
365 mini scary stories. You can read each story in like 30 seconds. So, if you got 5 minutes, if you're on the toilet, bada bing, perfect.
Yes. If you're on the toilet, if you're like one of us, I'm sorry. If you're a guy, you know what I'm talking about. Those 15, 20 minutes resting time. Or, as I call it, our time to disconnect from reality. It's a perfect book to go grab it and read. Next thing you know, it's like, oh my God, I just read like 20, 30 pages. Yes. So, you're doing something better than being on your phone. So, get the book.
And I appreciate the support.
So, Radar, this one is going to be a very interesting film. Now, me personally, when I see a film that's almost 2 hours long, I'm kind of hesitant to watch. But this one in particular is worth every minute. And yes, we are talking about Housebound. Housebound, 2014, directed by Gerard Johnstone. The cast includes Morgan O'Reilly as Kylie Bucknell, rimatewiata as Miriam Bucknell, glenpaulwaru as Amos, Cameronrhodes as Dennis, and Ryan Lamp as our favorite Eugene. So, what is the synopsis of this horror comedy? Well, a thief, Kylie, has a robbery, burglary gone wrong. She gets arrested, and instead of sending her to jail, the judge does probably one of the worst things you could possibly do is send her under house arrest back home to where her estranged mother lives, who believes that the house they live in happens to be haunted. I mean, what a better place to get, get house arrest and go into a haunted house. I don't know. That'll be something fun, maybe. But
they don't play around in New Zealand.
Oh, they don't. I mean, why send somebody to jail? We're gonna send you back to your mother. So, being that, I gotta ask you, Radar, do you think home detention or under house arrest for 8 months with your mom, you think that would be torture for you?
Now look, I love my mom. We love our moms, but there's a reason that we move out. And it's not because we're just dying to see the world. If I know if I had to move back in with my parents, I would rather take the jail time. I would go, hey, increase it two, 3 times, whatever you want to put me in my parents' house for, please. Please. Oh man, it's that would be so brutal. And it's the perfect way to connect with the main character too. Because yes. I mean, I don't know about you, JR, but do you feel the same way that Kylie feels?
Yeah, I agree with you. Listen, I love my mother. I do. But yes, we move out for a reason. And as a parents, you want your child to leave the nest and not come back. And yeah, sometimes, the child just decides to fly the hell out of the nest because he don't want to come back. But yeah, I would take the jail time. community service, because
Please.
for 8 months stuck in the house, and then you only have a short walking distance where you can go outside.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
brutal.
I think I definitely would take the time, or I would do something like, I don't know, throw something at the judge just to throw me in jail to get add more time.
Please, maybe get the sentence a little bit more extended. Go like, I might have killed someone too. Can you? What'll that get me?
Yeah, I know.
Because oh man, and parents always have this, and especially moms have this incredible ability of just walking in on you, and just at the worst possible times, like regardless of what you're doing, and you're like, what are you doing? Knock.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you have an attitude because they just happen to walk in where you're basically taking a shit. I
Right.
mean, like it's
Oh well,
like,
the door wasn't locked.
yeah,
That's
you can't get mad, or it's my house. Why are you locking the door? I'm taking a shit.
I'm doing something here. I'm getting changed. It's like so 8 months of that. No, thank you.
Now, speaking of mothers, I gotta tell you, Miriam in this film is she's one of my favorite moms in any movie, any horror movie, any comedy, because she is freaking hysterical, and to a point that she does everything in such an innocent way. Like the first time we see her is when they take Kylie to home, and all of a sudden she crashes into the car, the cop car, and then she like scares the shit. She goes by the window. Amos just freaking almost jumps out of his chair, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I did not. Not mind you." She says, "I did not see you." And then she goes, "Oh, my car is more damaged than your car." So they basically they go in the house. They put the ankle bracelet on Kylie, and Kylie obviously doesn't want to be home. I mean, like we said, you don't want to go back home. So while Kylie's at home, she listens to the radio, and her mom is on the phone talking about how the houses that she lives in is haunted. So I gotta ask you, Radar. After we get the phone, we listen to the phone call, and you get Kylie's reaction. I mean, what did you think of her reaction to the phone call? And this is where we get scenes of haunting or
Right.
paranormal
Paranormal.
happening. I mean, yeah. What were your favorite scenes, and like, what did you think of her reaction?
It, this movie, like you mentioned, 2 hours, and I'm starting to develop this catchphrase of, it's too damn long with anything, because like for me, a horror movie, a crisp 90 minutes is really
Yes.
that sweet spot. You want to be around there, and very rarely do I go for any film in general, but especially horror movies that approach that 2 hour mark. But this film does it. It does it incredibly well, and part of that is because it executes stuff really, really darn well throughout it. And the phone call to the radio station is hilarious. In itself, it's hilarious, but it's ingenious because it sets up kind of like, you know, what to expect from the movie and like what the plot is without just shoving it in your face or anything. Like the normal way of like, the mom going like, "Oh, this place is haunted." Instead, she calls into a radio station, and that's how you find out. And I think that's a genius way to do it. And like, we've all been there, where at one point or another, our parents have done something that's just embarrassed us. Hopefully, not to that level. That might cause a bit of a divide for sure. But I mean, we've all been there. So again, it's super relatable, and it's just in a genius way. It's like delivered. But what do you think about like not only the phone call, but everything past that kind of with the paranormal hauntings? What do you think about the build up and stuff that they did there?
I think it was like mind you, like I love horror movies that aren't the comedy is not forced.
Right.
That all the comedy is basically hidden within the dialogue of the film, because it's just they're witty comedies. That's the whole point. You have to listen to the dialogue because the conversations are what makes it the comedy. And I mean, there are some things that happen in this film that are freaking hysterical, but the fact that you know her mother was like, "Well, you don't want to talk about, it, but you know what you saw in this house." So Kylie is like, she shrugs it off, and then she goes to use the bathroom. And mind you, she's like she just finished drinking a couple bottles of beer because she was going, and she hears
Oh
a
yeah.
crack, and then she stops and she starts looking around, and then she continues going, and she stops. She stopped like 4 or 5 times because she got freaked out because she got scared. But I thought that was so brilliantly done. Like my wife sitting next to me, she is freaking laughing her ass off because she was like, "Oh my god, that is so hysterical." She's so scared that she stops peeing in order to try to track where the sound's coming from. And then there's another scene where she hears like a phone somewhere in
Yeah.
the house, so she goes down to the basement. Now, while in the basement, now mind you, prior to her going down to the basement, her mother was on the radio saying how she was so disturbed of what she saw in the basement that she hasn't gone down there for a while. And then she goes down there. She sees the shadow. Jesus Christ almost attacks her because, and then she turns around and who's in the basement? Amos, who happens to be her probation officer. Now, I'll be honest, I love this scene because the fact that the mother comes down and she basically is saying, "Listen, you don't want to tell your truth, you know." And Amos goes, "What truth? You know, this house is haunted. There's things that happen here."
Somebody grabbed my leg, but I only saw his hand.
How come your bracelet went off?
Why are you asking me?
Why don't you tell him what you really saw?
Why don't you shut up?
I'm sorry, Amos. It's just that this house is prone to certain disturbances.
Mom.
What do you mean?
Well, there may be 1 or 2 occupants who haven't quite left the premises.
No, I'm sorry. I still don't get what you mean.
So what Amos does, he takes out his recorder.
Yeah.
What he doing? Any spirits in this house, and he goes through the whole EVP session, which was freaking hysterical because you're like, hold up, this dude. First of all, this dude broke into the house.
Yeah.
Amos had a habit of breaking into the houses, and then he broke into the house, ends up in the basement because her the ankle bracelet went off because she basically passed a certain zone she's not supposed to be in.
Right.
And then afterwards, he was like, "Well, what we gotta start doing? We gotta set up, some cameras, and we gotta set up, some recorders." She's like, Miriam was like, "Oh, well, I don't have money to pay this." He goes, "Don't worry about it. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay nothing." And basically, we find out that Amos' second hobby, he's a paranormal investigator.
It's a brilliant use of like really rounding someone as a character, but also helping the story along.
I mean, there's so many things about this film that I love leading up to, like, she kept hearing creaks in the house. You had the shadow figures and stuff. She goes to the basement again because I think Graham is the name of her stepfather.
Yeah.
I mean, just show you how subtle the comedy is in this. Graham was told by Miriam, basically go have a conversation with her, talk to her. So Graham basically tells her, "Hey, could you go down to the basement with me, help me out with something?" And she's like, "What?" And they go down to she throws an attitude. And he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," So he goes down to the basement. So when he gets down there, she's down there basically waiting for him. Like, "What do you need?" "Oh, I need you to hold this, and I just have to glue it on." So he glues it on, and he's like holding it. He goes, "Yeah, we just have to wait for it to dry." She's like, "Oh, how long is it gonna take? 10 minutes." And she starts he goes this whole conversation about how basically his parents didn't love him. And it was just like, that was hysterical. Like the subtle comedy in this film around the whole horror aspects, it's just like done so well, man.
It's executed to like, I dare say perfection, but pretty darn close to it.
Yes.
Like it just teeters that line. It's, because horror comedy, it's a lot of the time it's just so over the top and ridiculous, which, it has its moments, but this film is so good at that subtle kind of like off kilter comedy that just kind of feels more like this is what would happen in everyday life. It's so good.
And there's another scene. I mean, I'm sure this scene had you laughing, where she's sleeping and she hears a noise, and she hears a voice, and the voice is like, "I can see you."
Oh
And
yeah.
then she turns around, is a freaking talking bear, and it starts making. And she turns on the light. She goes, "What the fuck you said?" And it starts talking, and she beats the living crap out of it. And she's literally, and she punched it first, and she gets up and starts kicking it. And the thing is like trying to talk back, and then all of a sudden she burns it. And the next day she wakes up to go take a shower, and the bear's in the shower with her. I mean, that was it's so like it's subtle. It's so like what's the word I'm looking for? It's something that's just like plain. They took something
Yeah.
that we've seen in plenty of movies and turned it into comedy, which is freaking hysterical. But it's just so done in such a mild manner approach that you appreciate, you know, the way they're pulling this film off. And like I said, the comedy just it's not forced comedy.
No.
The dialogue is just fun. There's never a moment in this film where a conversation is not boring because there's always some kind of joke or there's always a back and forth with every single person in this film interaction. But what we end up finding out later on in the film is that there is Graham basically gets asked by Kylie, "Why do you have so much stuff in this house?" He was like, "Oh, you're gonna have to talk to your mom about it." No, Graham, why do you have got so much? Why do you guys have all this stuff? Why did people leave the stuff in this house? So then we get the story aspect even come out even more. The fact that we soon discover that the home that they've been living in, which the mom in one part of the film says, because they found out that the home was a halfway house.
Yeah.
And Kylie basically berates her mother, "Why did you buy that house?" And she goes, "Well, when you're trying to start a family on your own, you got to take whatever bargains out there." That's hysterical. But like, what did you think of the discovery of the house they've been living in being a halfway house?
Right. I think for like what the story is and where it goes to, I think it's like perfect for that involvement of it. But again, they take something and they just say like the quiet part of a horror movie out loud, where it's always some dumb family moves into a haunted house and stuff, but they never say the part where it's like, well, we got a great deal on it, and they do it here. They say, "Yep, that's why we did it." It's hilarious because it's like, yeah, I mean, why not? But I think it really does help, like that it's a halfway house and it makes sense. And again, it's so grounded in the story, and it helps because like in conjunction with the comedy that's so subtle and this kind of like element of like, oh, is there something supernatural? I don't know. There's all these subtle things happening. Oh, it's a halfway house. Okay, well that's something where something haunted could definitely happen, and it really continues that subtlety, and it keeps it going forward. I don't know how you feel like about your experience with like halfway houses in terms of horror movies and stuff, but do you think it's like a good sort of catalyst to keep the story going?
I think the fact that you didn't see, like, I don't remember a film that used a halfway house at all as
Right.
being the center of the backstory of it.
Right.
And
Like it's normally like an orphanage
yeah, it's an
or like
orphanage or asylum or something, but a halfway house for
halfway
people
house.
who are drug users and stuff, in which it comes into effect later on in the film about this drug usage. But for me, I thought it was so clever though, because
Yeah.
the whole time you're thinking it's paranormal, and then you find out that 10 teens, I believe, were killed in this house, and one of them was Lizzie. And the fact that Lizzie kind of was like Kylie in a way, she
Yeah.
was, she used drugs, she went and had an addiction, she went and was a thief. Then you get this whole backstory that Lizzie was stabbed 67 times. And every time the story was brought up, everybody was like, "Oh yeah, it was kind of brutal. Yeah, it was brutal." They were like shrug it off almost, but and the fact that it did a horror trope, which I like the way they did it in this film, is they took a neighbor that lives next door who is your stereotypical. He has all the check marks as far as a killer.
Right.
A guy basically kills possums and skins them in his backyard. His house looks like crap. He's a hoarder. And the fact that Kylie she says, listen, because she found a denture in
Yeah.
this little box that basically Lizzie hid in the room. So they find out that this guy has dentures, so they want to take his dentures. So they break into his house, which is a whole cluster thing because the thing is, Amos was like, well, we can't break into his house. Come on, Kylie, you can't be doing this, And then they do it anyways, and he makes a joke. She was like, because she opens the hood of the car, takes the spark plug. He goes, "What are you doing?" "Oh, just in case we gotta break a window." "You didn't say we have to break a window. I mean, they probably leaves a key under something." She goes, "Nobody leaves a key in their son." So she picks something up, and it was like right on top of a cooler, the keys.
The keys.
But even like this, the subtle thing, like she goes into the house, right, and the guy's sleeping. She tries to pull his freaking denture out.
See that?
My wife is like, "Hold on, how's this guy not waking up?" I mean, she's like really in his mouth to the point where the only way he comes out, he chokes and he spits it out, but she has to leave the house. But yeah, it's just like I like that aspect and the fact that it opened up more of the story because it tied this whole thing where they thought this guy was possibly the killer. And then he gives you this backstory of
Right.
a character called Eugene, which what a name for a guy who's supposed to,
Yeah.
who we believe is the person, basically possibly the killer in this film. But it did do another trope that we've seen in a lot of films. When a stranger calls, where
Right.
you have that the killer, potential killer, living in the house. I mean, like, what did you think of that aspect of the film, and what did you think about this character, Eugene?
It's man, this film just I feel like it can basically do no wrong because it took another trope, the whole and this it's well done, like in the original Black Christmas, when a stranger calls. More recently, the boy did the same thing where it's like, oh, and even it feels like it probably was inspired by the boy because there's you're thinking, oh, it's a supernatural thing, just like in the boy, and then turns out no, it's a dude, and that's what happens in this movie, is that it wasn't anything supernatural. It was this dude named Eugene living in the walls. And I think it's so great too, because what are the chances that not only is it like, oh, there's someone living in my walls, but he's not a serial killer. What are the chances? Because if someone's living in your walls, there's something wrong probably with them. But it just turns out Eugene's just this weird kind of, yeah, he's super weird, but he's like a harmless guy who just kind of he's a little too scared. It's like a typical introvert who's like, I don't know how to talk to people, and just taken to the extreme of let me go hide in the walls. And I love that they subverted the expectations yet again. And I know it seems you like the character of Eugene, but I also want to add on to that. What do you think about not only Eugene, but who the killer turned out to be and how that climax happened?
I gotta be honest, I did not see that coming at all.
Oh no way.
And that's what I like. The film hit it so well because the person who was the killer, you've seen so much in the film, and the fact that the character he plays. So, spoiler alert: Dennis, who was her psychiatrist, happened to work in a halfway house, and he had a tendency of basically being abusive.
Yep.
Because, to his words, nobody appreciated. And he was trying to help them. And it turned out that Lizzie beat the crap out of him in the process. So, but yeah, I liked that twist. I liked how they did it because the fact that Kylie seen him take these dentures out.
Yeah.
He goes, "Mom, could you come? Could you have a conversation with you?" Now, prior to this, they basically Dennis was saying that Kylie had dissociative identity disorder, so she was making all this up. So, and the fact that he goes, "How are your periods? How are you?" Yeah, because when a woman is on her period, they act a certain way. But even that was freaking comedic. But when when we discover Eugene, which once again they took another trope in the discovery of Eugene because she goes into the basically the wall space, and as she's going through the walls, there's a hole, and she sees him in there with a headphones on, and then all of a sudden she looks again, and he's gone. Now, when I'm watching this scene, I'm like, all right, she's gonna look again, and his eyes gonna be on the other side,
Right.
like looking at her. So the fact that she's sitting there, she turns around and his whole head sticking out, just looking at her, dude, that had me dying because he came off the way he looked. Like, oh my god, this dude is either feral or he's just gone. He's definitely a
Right.
killer. But then when it turns out that Dennis was the killer, tries to basically kill Kylie and Miriam, and then they go into Eugene's room, and she's sitting there and she's like, because Dennis stabbed her in the leg, so she's peeling it back, and her mom's like, "Oh, you gotta take care of that. You gotta take care of that." So he throws the first aid kit, and she was like, "Well, you tell him thank you." And Kylie's like, "What? Where do you think he got it from?" She goes, "Don't be mean. Tell him thank you."
Tell him thank you.
And Eugene's like, "Well, I usually give the stuff back." She's like, "What?" And then and the mother's like, "You look pale," and tries to give him that big vase.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Mom, it's not water." And Eugene's like freaking laughing. And she's like, "Oh, you think this is funny?" It's the fact that the person who you thought was the killer wasn't the killer. Ended up
Yeah.
being just scared shitless of everything. They wanted to basically, because he witnessed the killing of Lizzie, they didn't want to say nothing because he was going to be the prime suspect because nobody's going to believe him.
Right.
But even the scene where he gets stabbed and you think Eugene's dead, and then you think that they basically killed Dennis by throwing him off the roof, which the guy has 9 lives because the guy took a beating.
You took it.
Took a cheese grater to the face, which is pretty hysterical. But it's like they thought he was dead. He comes in the house, he knocks out Kylie, he starts choking the mom, and then the cupboard opens. Eugene's hand comes out, starts poking her in the head to wake her up. He didn't come out to fight Dennis.
Yeah.
So he's like, "I'm gonna wake you up because remember you said I was a coward, I was scared, so I'm doing something. I'm waking you up." And then he hands her basically it looks like a pitchfork. Now that was the coolest kill scene I've seen in a while, where put the pitchfork underneath through his chin,
Yeah.
and you see the whole cable wiring going through it. And then it goes, "Oh shit!" I was like, Eugene pressed the button, head blows up.
Oh man.
Great kill, great kill.
Great.
I do got to ask you about one scene because this scene had me freaking dying. Now, when Amos arrives to the house and Dennis opens the door, the fact that Amos had the tracker for the ankle bracelet, and he goes, "Oh, look, I can track Kylie." Gives Dennis the phone. Here, call the cops. What did you think of that whole interaction between Dennis and Amos? Basically,
It's so wild. It's so like infuriating in a way because you're like, oh man, no, what are you doing, Amos? But it fits Amos's character to a T. Like it's so hard for like when you're writing something that's like big climax or something or the end of a movie or the end of a story. It's so difficult to keep your characters consistent. Because sometimes it could be to the detriment of how the character looks in the eyes of someone who watches it. But they didn't do that. They were like, nope, Amos is an idiot and he's going to stay an idiot.
The part where he was like, "I need to wedge into the wall." And Dennis is behind him with a knife. He just grabs a knife. He just tries it down. Here, it's too thin. Drops it. And he's like, "What the fuck?"
What are you doing? It's so good.
And then he survives. I don't know how he survived. He survived.
It's so, oh man, like I said, the comedy is so good in this. It's so well done.
And what better way to end the movie where they're there trying to basically she's there, Kylie's celebrating 8th month there, so she's free to go. So he's gonna cut the ankle bracelet. The mom's there with a video camera. Now, another thing of this movie that was freaking hysterical was there was a dinner scene where the mom is telling Graham, look, she got iPhone thing. She got iPhone thing. She said, it's not iPhone. It's not iPhone. No, it's an iPhone thing. So the whole time they're talking about technology. When Kylie goes to use the computer, mom still has dial-up. And gets the ging, and then it disconnects. She couldn't even log in. But at the end of the film, the mom's trying to figure out how to work a video camera. And then the video camera stops working. Kylie grabs the video camera and she yells, Eugene. So the fact that they kept Eugene was classic. I mean, oh my, any closing thoughts on this one, man?
I think this is such a good film. I feel like it's a underappreciated gem, not underrated, because I feel like anyone who's seen it has given it the proper rating it deserves, but just not enough people have seen it. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because it's like from New Zealand and it just doesn't get enough hype, I feel. Yeah. I don't know. But I think this is a definite watch for anyone who's like, even anyone who's a veteran of the horror genre, but anyone who's just like familiar with the tropes. It's the perfect sort of film to watch. What about you?
I'm gonna go on it. People will be like, what? I'm gonna say this is probably for me one of the top 5 horror comedies out there as far as horror goes.
Oh wow, okay. That's a high bar.
Because think about it. The reason we like Shaun of the Dead is because the comedy is so subtle. The characters make the comedy. What they do, their behaviors, their reactions, and they stick to who their characters are. That makes that film great. I think this film's the same. Each character is memorable. Miriam is basically your typical mom who likes to gossip. Even Amos goes, yeah, your mom likes to gossip a lot. She goes, yeah, all right, I see that. And the fact that that's what she told her mom to do. Mom, I need to go downstairs. I need you to keep Dennis and the cop busy. What do you want me to do? Just do what you usually do. She sits down and starts talking gossip. Amos, you're a dumb cop. you're a dumb cop who stuck to the character. Then you had, Graham, basically you're disconnected, father figure who it's a trope even in comedies from the 80s.
Right.
Where you have that one father he's just in the house. He's just present. He doesn't even conversate during dinner. He just sits there. You had the killer next door, your typical Eugene who you thought was going to be the killer, not the killer. I mean, this movie had everything. And I tried to find a flaw in the film, and I cannot find a flaw in the film. And I tried to find something that I could say, like, wow, I didn't like this in this film. But I did not mind it being an hour and 52 minutes because
it's so good. It's just done so well. I feel like they didn't waste really any part of it, which is so interesting that the story is still that long, though.
Yeah.
And you would be really hard pressed to find anything that you're like, yeah, you can cut that scene out.
Yeah, because even certain scenes, you're like, when the comedy lingers, it lingers to perfection. Like when Kylie escapes from the house, when Eugene basically chases her out the house, she goes to the police precinct. And the cop's like, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be on their house arrest? She goes, yeah, there's a killer in the house. I need you to go to the house. And she goes into this long story. It's like, hold on, I got to take a written statement. So he starts writing basically her first 4 words. He goes, all right, I got this. And the rest was incoherent. It was just a blur. What were you saying? And then she starts talking. He's there just typing slowly. I mean, and it lingered there till Amos showed up. It was freaking hysterical and great. And I think that's what's missing in a lot of horror comedies is just like Totally Killer's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect dialogue. It knows what's its story, knows where it's going to carry and go, and it does it. I think this movie right off the bat. I mean, the guy tried to commit robbery with a friend, and her friend knocked himself out with the sledgehammer. I don't know if he died because they didn't even say he died or not.
They didn't even reference back to him.
But she's great. I mean, I don't know who this actress was, and I became a fan of her. And she did everything to play the badass, like the black sheep, scapegoat, the reject of the family, and she played it to the T. I mean, yeah, every character played it to a T, and yeah, I agree. Very underappreciated film. Watch it if you're into horror comedies. You're into movies with good storylines. Matter of fact, I think I might have to bring this into what's your story, because this film is just, we'll take a deeper dive in there too. But yeah, hey, if we do it, you'll see Radar on there too, because we gotta get people to watch this film. It's definitely
So
underappreciated.
good.
It should be watched. And me and Radar were talking earlier before we came online, is the cover does fool you. And the
Yeah,
cover is not what you expect of it. But after you watch the film, you will understand why the cover is the cover, why it looks like a family portrait. But yeah, definitely watch it. It's currently streaming on Tubi. I think you can watch it on Plex as well. But go to Tubi, because
Tubi for the win.
yeah, Plex is, I'm not a big fan of Plex. But yeah, watch it. Definitely, we both agree it's a very good comedy, very underappreciated film, a film that should be watched. And let us know what you think of this film, because yeah, me and Radar, you can tell me high reviews, and we love it. But yeah, we want to know what you think about this film. If you haven't watched it, watch it. Comment below. Give us your input if this is a horror film that should be revisited more often. So this is GR. That's my boy Radar, author extraordinaire. Like I said before, get the book. If you don't get the book, tisk on you. But yes,
We'll
get
pull a
the book.
Housebound on you.
Yeah, we will. We'll do a story about your house and whatever horror you're hiding in it. But yes, don't forget, like, subscribe, share. Yes, another episode of The House That Horror Built here on Horror Fiend TV. We got more coming your way. Another film that we're gonna have 2 surprise guests, and we're almost wrapping up the season. And man, wait till you see what we have planned for another show.
Oh yeah.
So, GR Radar Horror Fiend TV, we are out. Peace.